.NET Rocks episode 888 with guest G. Andrew Duthie. Recorded live Thursday, June 20th, 2013. This episode is brought to you by Telerik, offering the best in developer tools and support. And by Franklins.net, makers of GesturePak, a powerful gesture recording and recognition system for Microsoft Connect for Windows developers. Details at gesturepak.com. And by Diatom, developers of the .NET Rocks mobile app, available now for Windows Phone, iPhone, and Android phones. And now, here are Carl and Richard.
Thank you very much. Welcome back to .NET Rocks. It's Carl and Richard, and we are going to geek out, not a geek out show, but it's kind of a geek out show on the .NET Gadgeteer platform. Andrew Duthie's coming up in just a few minutes.
It is kind of .NET-y, but it is also kind of geeky. And I do have to mention something about geeking out. If you haven't listened to the Telescope Geek Out show, the Space Telescope Geek Out show, so you remember one of the things we mentioned in that one, we mentioned two different Kickstarters.
Yep.
There was our kid that was really the inspiration. The space telescope for the public funded. They made their million. It's going ahead for sure. Wow. It's happening. So that's good news. But the other one, do you remember the other Kickstarter?
Yeah.
It was that little indie film called The Good Reactor.
On thorium reactors.
Right. And they were only halfway with less than a week to go. I think the .NET Rocks listeners came through, man, because they're funded.
Wow, that's great.
Yeah, they're funded.
Congratulations.
I'm really excited about that. I'm in on that as well, so I'll be getting an advanced copy of the video, but I'm just really glad that film is going to get made. It's really exciting to me.
Very exciting.
Yeah. And if you were one of the contributors to that, thank you. We really appreciate you pitching in. These things mean a lot to us.
Sure do, and they will mean a lot to you someday as well. And your children, most likely. Well, let's get started with a better know a framework.
Awesome. So what do you got, buddy?
What do I got?
Tell me something amazing.
It's not amazing, but it's cool.
Okay.
Go to tinyurl.com/Gadgeteer Robot.
Oh, no.
This
really?
guy built a robot with wheels running on .NET Gadgeteer. The chassis from Seattle Robotics Society. The motor controller is from Pololu. And the display is from Seed Studio. It's all .NET, and he's got a video of it wandering around, and he's controlling it. It's basically awesome. Like your iRobot Roomba kind of thing, but he built it himself, and he said in record time.
And it's all .NET, and you can see it's Gadgeteer because everything is just plug and play.
Yeah.
That's cool.
If you haven't checked out Gadgeteer, you're in for a treat in this next hour because I'm hooked on it. Anyway, that's it.
That's what you got?
That's what I got. It's pretty cool.
Awesome.
Who's talking to us?
I grabbed a comment off of show 878. That's the one we did with James Kovacs, who was talking about programming JavaScript functionally. Mm-hmm. And this comment comes from Charlie Gage, who says, great show as always. Richard's comment about the confusion of which JavaScript library works well with another one hit the nail on the head.
Boing.
There are so many libraries and frameworks out there for JavaScript that it can be a nightmare to try and sort it all out. Are there any resources, websites, blogs, etc. that offer any help with this?
The problem is that every time you have a list of stuff,
it
gets old, and then it clutters up the internet, and people don't take them down.
Yeah, it's true. But I think it's almost worth a show. Because who was it we were talking to? Was it James? We were talking about the different tribes.
Yes.
There's literally like these sweet tribes. So I feel like I want to do a show that just sort of defines the different tribes together.
Okay.
And then we can have these groupings like that.
We could do them on a regular basis. It would be helpful.
Yeah, well, it's something worth revisiting. I mean, certainly we do every time we end up talking about another JavaScript suite with John Papa or Scott Allen. You know, it's an ongoing process. So we'll try and contribute to that, Charlie, to try and make it better. And but if you want to maintain that list, we're happy to let you do it. Feel free.
Yep.
And as encouragement, a .NET Rocks mug is on its way to you. And if you'd like a .NET Rocks mug, just write a comment on the website at .NETRocks.com or on any of our mobile apps. We've got them for iPhone, Android, Windows Phone 7 and 8, as well as Windows 8. And those apps were built by Diatom Enterprises. And Diatom Enterprises would love to build you a mobile app. You can reach them at the website.
And before we go any further, I'm going to freak out. No.
Nice.
Pluralsight provides comprehensive developer training online. They have hundreds of hardcore developer training courses authored by industry experts. They release around 30 new courses every month and offer a free 10-day trial, giving you 200 minutes of access. Pluralsight offers a wide range of developer training courses, including coverage of iOS, Java, Android, web development, and pretty much everything Microsoft, including 10 courses on Windows Azure. Actually, it's more like 20 now. I can't imagine when this was written. Try Pluralsight today. Subscription plans start at just $29 a month. And with that, let me welcome back to the show Andrew Duthie, a.k.a. DevHammer. He's a technical evangelist for Microsoft's Mid-Atlantic States District, where he provides support and education for developers working with the Microsoft Development Platform. In addition to his work with Microsoft, Andrew is the author of several books on ASP.NET and web development and has spoken at numerous industry conferences from VS Live and ASP.NET Connections to Microsoft's Professional Developer Conference and TechEd. Andrew has been participating in the user group community since way back in 1997 when one of his coworkers dragged him out to the Internet Developers User Group in Tysons Corner, Virginia, and he's been hooked ever since. DevHammer is also the creator and developer of Community Megaphone, a site designed for promoting and finding developer community events. And in addition to his work in software development, Andrew's enjoyed some recent forays into the world of hardware experimentation, including developing for Connect and .NET Gadgeteer, which we're talking about today, using his newly formed hardware chops to do everything from blinking LEDs and making strange noises to flying a helicopter with his bare hands. Ooh, can't wait to hear that. Welcome, awesome. Andrew.
Hey, guys. Glad to be here.
Helicopter with your bare hands. What's that all about?
Well, so started off, I guess right around when Gadgeteer launched, I got the okay from my manager to pick up. They had GHI has this Fez Spider starter kit. And one of the cool things about that is you get a bunch of stuff in a box that kind of really lets you get started and get creative right away. It's a little pricier than some of the other embedded hardware things, but you kind of get everything you need to go out of the box. Well, I started off thinking, okay, there's cool things I can do with this kit. And then once I got finished doing a few projects, I wanted to do something a little more exciting. So I started looking at some of these little infrared helicopters, infrared remote control helicopters. And I thought, well, if I could record the signals from the remote for the helicopter and then play it back, I could probably get it to fly. Yep. So that was kind of like V1 was, let me capture the IR signals, which is just, a series of pulses, and then play those back, and did that at a code camp and got great applause for that. And I thought, making it fly up 6 inches and then crash is entertaining and all that, but it's probably not enough.
Not enough.
So let me start digging into this. And I started doing some research on the web. And it turns out there was a guy who had already gone through the process of reverse engineering. The copter that I have is called the SEMA S107.
Yeah.
And there's a guy who had actually already reverse engineered the timings for the protocol. So all I needed to do then
for the IR protocol?
Yeah, for the IR protocol, exactly. Wow.
That's
so then what stuff. I needed, it's not too bad. I mean, really what you need to do that is you just basically need an IR receiver and you set up a oscilloscope on it and measure the pulses.
Okay.
I know that sounds a lot easier than it probably is, which is why I used somebody else's reverse engineering and didn't do it myself.
Sure.
But so once I had the IR protocol, then I could create a .NET class that would essentially output that protocol on the Gadgeteer itself. What I needed then was, okay, so I have the ability to send this out through a little component that GHI made, but it didn't give me a very good range.
Right.
So I ended up working with what was at the time the Tiny CLR community, which has since kind of been folded into GHI's website. We'll have that URL on the show notes, I'm sure. I worked with a bunch of folks on the community to actually create a custom Gadgeteer module that was essentially a high power IR emitter. So it has 3 IR LEDs, and its job is just to push out as much infrared light as possible so that I could fly the helicopter successfully at a broader range.
Like, what's the range?
I've probably had it at about probably 15, 20 feet.
Wow.
And it really depends on the environment. The downside of IR is that it's very much subject to interference.
Yeah.
So flying with IR outside, forget about it. The sun really just overwhelms it.
Yeah.
And then there are certain types of fluorescent ballasts, for example, that can also interfere. So really kind of depends on the environment. But I actually, you had Carrie Hamill on for one of your shows.
Mm-hmm.
I actually visited her in Redmond, and she had created a custom version of the controller I'd built, and we were able to fly that up to the second floor in one of the atriums in her building. So that was kind of fun, flying that around the lobby. But in the end, what I created was a Gadgeteer rig that recreated the controls that come with the helicopter. Now, you might think, oh, well,
yeah,
isn't it cheaper to just use the remote control that comes with the helicopter?
Mm-hmm.
And that's absolutely true. First of all, it was the challenge of, can I do it? And I managed to pull that off. And so I had a little joystick and a potentiometer and all that, just it's plug and play because it's Gadgeteer. So it was really easy to do. Then I added an Ethernet port.
Oh, yeah.
By adding an Ethernet port, then I could set up a socket server on the Gadgeteer mainboard, and it becomes an IR server.
That's right.
And once I've got that, then I can plug that into the network, and I can use my Windows Phone to control the helicopter.
Oh, yeah.
Or I could use a tablet. Or, and here's where the flying with bare hands comes in, I can use Kinect.
Oh, yeah.
So I created a Kinect project where the Kinect tracked the positions of my hands, and one hand was used for pitch and yaw, and the other one was for throttle. And so I was able to actually fly the helicopter without touching a thing.
And at that point, it's called using the force.
yeah. It's not quite the same as the what are they called? The headsets. You guys had a show on that.
Yeah, now if you can do it with an apple or a pear and feed your girlfriend, now I'd be impressed.
Yeah, it was pretty fun. And even better.
I like the idea of the emotive headset.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Yeah, that's probably next on my hit parade. I got to try that sometime. Yeah. But turns out they have there's a program at Microsoft in Redmond called The Garage, and they were having a science fair, and I actually submitted this project to the science fair, and they decided to use this for a contest. So they actually recreated the rig that I had built from Gadgeteer, bought a bunch of helicopters, and had people try to fly them onto various platforms for prizes. So it was a whole lot of fun, and I didn't get a chance to actually go out to the science fair myself, but it was kind of cool that, one of my projects actually got used in that way.
Andrew, I got to tell you, I think that is probably the coolest project that has ever been described on .NET Rocks.
Wow.
Being able to fly a helicopter by waving your hands. That is so freaking cool. I just can't tell you.
It was a lot of fun to build.
So the reason that you're on the show is because I have caught the Gadgeteer bug. I think I told Richard about this, that I was doing some stuff with it. Anyway, I got a project and just going crazy trying to find IR stuff,
Right.
And I'm looking on the website where they have all the modules, and there's the community section. And sure enough, there's an IR emitter for Gadgeteer. Because like you, I used the Fez Panda. Which had a really good IR emitter, and that was no problem. Well, it wasn't great, but, it worked. But there really wasn't one for Gadgeteer, which is different hardware, right?
Exactly.
So I see here it is. And who did this? Andrew Duthie. I know that guy. Holy crap. So you basically sent me one. I haven't actually tested it yet. I'm sorry, but I've sort of been busy with other things. But let me tell you about my project.
Okay, great.
I'm not flying helicopters with my hands. It's not that cool. But what I do want to do is control pan tilt heads for video cameras remotely. Okay? So you basically have a tripod, and you put this pan tilt head on the tripod. You connect it just like you would connect a camera. And then you put the camera inside of this pan tilt head. And the idea is that you can use a remote to move it back and forth and up and down. And it also will the same remote will work as a zoom for the camera, right? So basically what I've got is one remote that controls the pan and tilt and one remote that controls the zoom in the camera. And I want to do this programmatically. I actually want to have a touch screen interface where I can see in my cameras, and just by, doing hand gestures and things like that, select different shots so that I can do a 3-camera shoot by myself with one person. That's the goal.
That sounds very cool.
Yeah. It's simple technology, you would think, that, that does exist, but putting it all together means that instead of hiring a crew of 3 or more people, that one person could go out to a site and do a video shoot, 3 cameras by themselves, maybe even 4.
That sounds cool. Now, I just thought of another use you could use that for. So you guys were geeking out on telescopes. Imagine taking that tilt and pan head, put it on a telescope, and then here's even better. So my coworker Brian Hitney is really into astronomy. He actually created a Windows Store starter kit for an app called Messier Sky Objects. So imagine taking that app, connecting it to your pan and tilt head by Gadgeteer, so that when you select an object in the app, the camera automatically focuses on that particular part of the sky.
Yeah, I can see a real-time sort of image coming from the telescope on the computer where you just sort of zoom in with your fingers like you would a picture.
Yeah,
but you're looking
lots of cool possibilities.
You're looking at stars.
And you guys do know these products exist, right?
Well, of course, but
most modern
what's the challenge in buying one?
Yeah. Because there's more to it than just knowing what point of the sky to look in. If you're talking about a really faint object, you actually need to track that object over time. You have to have the telescope keep moving to keep it in the center of the frame so that you can actually resolve it.
Yeah.
Which is really kind of fun to do. Like just anticipating the rate of planet movement. That's fun.
All right, so let's talk about the Gadgeteer platform. We haven't done it in a while since Carrie was on, but if you haven't got the bug yet, just tell us how freaking easy it is to do this.
The interesting thing. So I've looked at both the Netduino platform. I had looked at Arduino, and I really didn't get the bug, in part because I was intimidated by the hardware aspects of things. Yeah. I was really, it's kind of like, okay, there's this board, right? It's got a bunch of pinholes that you can plug stuff into. And there are shields and other stuff. But getting from sort of hello world, which the hello world for any embedded platform is blink and LED, right? It's really easy to do that on pretty much any of these platforms. Right. I mean, not really challenging. But once you get past hello world, it's like, what do you do? Right. And so when I got this starter kit, and it had a 4.3-inch touchscreen, it had buttons, it had a bunch of different, it had all kinds of input and output. And within the space of 10 minutes, I had a working digital camera.
Yeah.
I plug in a camera, I plug in a button, I plug in the screen, and literally the way that Gadgeteer works is by abstraction. So each of the various devices that you plug in comes with a software driver that makes it as simple as, button.pressed plus equals tab, just like you would in .NET. Right? It's just like building a C# event handler for a software button, except it's actual hardware. And all of the necessary stuff to figure out when the interrupts that are taking place in the hardware when the button is pressed are sort of abstracted away.
Yeah.
All of that stuff's available if you want to dig down into the guts of it. There's no problem for people who really want to geek out on the hardware aspect and get down close to the metal with code. But Gadgeteer is designed so that you don't have to look at that. It's actually got a design surface where, you go into Visual Studio and you drag the main board that you want to use, and you drag in a button and a camera and a screen, and you drag the connections to the appropriate sockets that actually light up and tell you, oh, the button can be connected here, 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 or here.
Yeah, you actually don't have to connect them yourself. You can just drag the button, the thing, the temperature gauge, whatever the sensors are, and say, wire them up, and it'll tell you where to plug them in.
Yeah,
and then,
exactly.
Yeah.
And you just match it up in the physical world, what you've got on the design surface.
Yep.
And all of the drivers that are automatically then instantiated for those pieces of hardware under the covers. And let me tell you, I mean, writing code to an LCD screen is not trivial, right? Writing a button handler, yeah, most people could learn how to do that. Learning how to turn on an LED, easy enough. But writing to an LCD, yeah, better to do that with somebody else's code if you can.
Yeah. And like you said, it's all about the abstraction. If I'm reading data from a temperature sensor, it's just going to fire an event that gives you the temperature. Like you don't have to know about voltages. You don't have to do math.
Well, or you can read a value. I mean, that's most of the sensors that have a value range. You're reading a value from that sensor, and you can use a timer for that, or you can do that in an event.
Yep.
But the key is that rather than in other platforms, what you would typically do is you'd be measuring the voltage, and you'd say, okay, I know that the max is 3.3 volts, the minimum is 0 volts, so let me do some math to figure out the percentage.
Yeah.
Oh, okay, it's not that hard to do. But if you don't know, for example, what the desired range of a particular sensor is, it can be tricky to get accurate readings sometimes. I mean, temperature is a great example of that. It's challenging sometimes if you don't know what the ratio of the voltage to actual temperature is. That can be tough to figure out.
And it's really about making it as easy and quick as possible to come up with a prototype, right? I mean, that's really what it's about, is prototyping a device with software. And the less stuff you have to do, the faster you can get that done.
Yeah, I mean, so the Gadgeteer project, as I'm sure you talked to Carrie about, was created by Microsoft Research. And it was created because they found themselves throwing away a lot of prototype hardware, or not being able to reuse components. So the initial impetus for the project was, hey, is there a way that we can prototype things and then be able to pull them all apart and build something completely different with it? So that's sort of one aspect of it. And from a professional hardware developer's standpoint, yeah, I think being able to get to market with a device very quickly by throwing a bunch of modules together, prototyping, testing some concepts, is a really powerful concept. But for hobbyists like myself, it's just the satisfaction of being able to imagine something and build it in a way that wasn't possible previous to Gadgeteer.
So I sat down with my 11-year-old daughter, and I gave her a list on paper of all of the different things that you could connect to this. And, in other words, and you can take any of these things as inputs or outputs and add logic, like, if something is in this range, then do this, or if something, just gave her that basic sense of power of what could be done. And I said, now think up a gadget based on these things right here. And, it's a little bit intimidating at first, but she comes back to me and she says, all right, I got it. An alarm clock that uses the barometer, and if it's raining, will wake you up with raindrops keep falling on my head. And if it's sunny, will wake you up with, I'm walking on sunshine. And I thought that was awesome. I thought that was brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
Because that's just something cool that you could do that with literally 5 lines of code.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there are at least 3 different ways in just the GHI modules to make music, right? They actually have an FM receiver, so if you wanted to just play whatever's on the radio, you could do that. There are multiple camera modules. There's just all kind, and there's stuff that you can control. For example, you can control 120 volt power, so there are relays modules where you can actually turn on and off. Obviously, anytime you're dealing with house current, you want to really know what you're doing.
Hire an electrician.
It can kill you.
Yeah.
I'm not in favor of people dying based on my advice. So please, hire an electrician if you don't know what you're doing, or maybe even if you do.
That's the point I'm at with another project is getting the relays to work. I'll tell you what the project is, but just basically speaking, I want to control appliances. I want to turn a fan on and off. I want to turn a humidifier on and off, and I want to turn, and I actually want to turn water on and off. And I can do that with a valve, that you can get at Home Depot. That's just a relay valve. And the project actually, and so that's where I am in this project. I've got the relay, but I've got to work with an electrician to help me with that. But here's this project. And I know it sounds like weeds, but it's growing tomatoes in a hothouse in an indoor grow room with grow lights, with water flow, with fans, heaters, and with humidifiers. And so the basic idea is that I have to, keep the temperature in a certain range, keep the humidity in a certain range, keep the soil at a certain wetness. By the way, there's a water a moisture detector,
a moisture sensor. Yep,
which is brilliant. It's just 2 prongs, and so they're very close together. And if there's water, then there's going to be a circuit. And basically how the strength of the circuit, strength of the voltage will tell you how much water there is.
So what Pete Brown and I joked that the ideal use for the moisture module is for dads with new babies. You just use it as a diaper sensor. That way you can automatically, you can get like a text message or something when the diaper needs changing.
And there's wires coming out of your baby's butt.
Yeah, that's not good.
Again, that was another one of those, maybe don't follow my advice on this.
I actually, here's another story. My other daughter, my oldest daughter, who's now 17, when she was young, she did ballet her whole life and developed, sort of had a genetic problem where she walked on her tippy toes. And her mother did it, her grandmother, her great-grandmother, it was hereditary. And so we were trying to cure her of this, otherwise, she'd have all sorts of problems later, would need foot surgery. So at the time there was no Gadgeteer, but I tried to create a device and I ended up not doing it because she wouldn't wear it. But that was a pressure sensor that I could put in the heel of her shoe. And it would, every time you step on it, it would give you a value and give you a value. And I could read, and, if she's walking, which I can get with another sensor, and the heel doesn't go down in a certain time, sound an alarm, buzz, electric shock, whatever it is, the threat of putting that in her shoes was just enough for her to get a little serious about wearing a brace and things like that. She outgrew it,
Nice.
Of course, but I thought, that was just another little gadget that I could have made with Gadgeteer.
Yeah, and so it's easy to get really creative with this, and as you said, it's also easy to get hooked. So I will warn people: you get started with Gadgeteer, and you can actually start laying out some money on the individual modules are pretty reasonable for the most part, but there's so many of them, and you just want to have. It's like potato chips, right? You can't stop with just one. You want more.
Richard, do you remember when I got into the basic stamp stuff, and you said, "Be careful with that"?
Yeah, I've got it all over my house, actually.
So Basic Stamp was sort of one of the very first, for me anyway, one of the very first gadget platforms. And you connected to this little device with a little breadboard that you had with USB. It was very much like Gadgeteer, but it wasn't nearly at that layer of abstraction that we're talking about.
Now,
Right.
I think, and you hit on the key thing here, which is that just making the programming model simple and hiding all this analog digital conversion from you so that you don't
absolutely.
have to deal with reality. Actually figuring out if a valve is closed is really, really hard.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's the thing is that most people, so, if you don't, and to be fair, people who are programming with Arduino, there's lots of Arduino code that's available for free that targets specific sensors and controls and things like that. So it's not as though it's impossible to find code that will help you do what you're going to do. But if you're starting from scratch with a sensor or something that you want to connect, you want to breadboard it or, whatever else, what you got to do is you got to go in and find the data sheet for this component. You've got to understand what the output values are. You've got to figure out how that maps to the voltages that you're going to read on a given pen. You have to know what protocol it talks. There's, I2C. There's all kinds of different protocols. Whereas all of that stuff's just kind of abstracted. And the other nice thing with Gadgeteer is that there's only one connector, right? It's this 10-pin connector. It's keyed, so you can't connect it backwards. And each of the sockets are labeled, so they tell you by letter, this socket accepts these specific types of modules. So it really kind of makes it not 100%, but mostly idiot proof, which let me tell you, given my hardware skills, was necessary for me at the outset. I have actually succeeded, even though I'm mostly using Gadgeteer. I have actually succeeded in releasing the magic blue smoke at least once. I have killed a Gadgeteer main board. It's rare, but I am skilled enough to do it. So definitely something to be avoided if you can.
Yeah. Hey, Richard, you know what time it is?
It must be that happy time again.
That's right. It's time to check in on the gadget I have strapped to the hull of the new Star Trek Enterprise.
What?
I told you it wasn't funny.
We'll give you a courtesy laugh.
All right. Courtesy laugh. No, it's time to give away a Telerik DevCraft Complete Collection to a lucky member of the .NET Rocks fan club.
Awesome.
Yeah, but before I do that, I need to tell you that Telerik recently released DevCraft for Q2, Quarter 2, 2013. The 10 new controls and over 250 new features across all 6 of their UI control suites allow you to cover more scenarios out of the box. Tile list for Ajax, calendar, data storage, touch, and more for Windows 8, as well as offline cloud data synchronization for Windows Phone and Cloud MBAS are just a few of the major new things. The newly introduced graph interactivity support and Telerik reporting helps you create even more interactive reports. JustCode's new integration with JustDecompile allows you to debug third-party libraries without having the source code available. Check it out at Telerik.com, and don't forget to thank them for supporting .NET Rocks.
Yes, sir. So who's our winner this time, buddy?
Today's winner is Keith Beller.
Congratulations, Keith.
Golf clap for Keith.
Clappers.
Yeah. And if you don't know what we're talking about, every show we give away a Telerik DevCraft Complete Collection. This is everything Telerik does in one box to a lucky member of the fan club. If you're not a member, go to .NETRocks.com, click on the big Get Free Stuff button, answer a few questions, and join the club. We have thousands of members, and every show, as I said, we give away this DevCraft Complete Collection. And every December, we're giving away $5,000 worth of technology. And we like to ask our guests, and this ought to be good. Andrew Duthie, if you had $5,000 to spend on technology today, what would you buy?
Oh, probably everything that GHI makes.
As many as possible, right?
Gus is going to love that answer.
Yeah.
Well, let's see. I've already got my Xbox One pre-ordered.
You could get a lot of stuff from
You could
GHI.
get a lot of stuff for $5,000.
You could have devices hiding in every corner of your house. I don't know.
I'm not sure my wife would be a fan of that.
Who would do that? Richard.
Who would do that? The whole trick is so that nobody can tell.
Yeah.
The whole trick is it's got to be invisible.
Yeah, I seem to remember a conversation I had with you, Richard, about your phone system. That was pretty geeky, just that alone. So,
one step at a time, man. But I hate to bring it back to reality here, but I think the only complaint that anybody can really have with .NET Gadgeteer is, comparatively speaking, this stuff's expensive.
Well, so yes and no. So one of my favorite boards that GHI makes is something called the Fez Arduino B. And it's actually a hybrid Arduino layout Gadgeteer board. And the advantage there is that you get the pin layout that would allow you to use many of the Arduino shields. So if you're somebody who's kind of coming over from the Arduino world and, you've still got some shields you want to try out, but you want to use some Gadgeteer sockets, it gives you 3 Gadgeteer sockets, which isn't a ton, but at least gets you the basics. But it's got onboard USB host. It's got onboard micro SD or mini SD. It's got onboard XB socket plus the shield. Gives you a lot of options in terms of expansion, and it's about $40. So it's really inexpensive to get started with.
So the center of the universe, as you were saying, is GHI, GHIelectronics.com.
Right.
Now, what is their relationship to Microsoft, actually? Are they just a manufacturer of all this stuff?
Well, so they manufacture. I think they also worked with the MS Research folks, on developing Gadgeteer. But there are lots of other folks who build Gadgeteer mainboards and modules as well. There's a UK company called Love Electronics. There's another company called I think the board is called Mountaineer. I don't remember the name of the company that manufactures it. And then plus there's all of the community modules that you mentioned. I think
including yours.
Yeah, including mine. There are at least, I think, 15 on the website right now, and that isn't even the full range of Gadgeteer modules. And there's one guy named Justin who is like a module maniac. He has built a bunch of different really cool modules from like an LED stereo, what's called a stereo UV module. So
Wow.
It basically gives you kind of like the level meters complete with green, yellow, and red. He's got, what's the other? He actually built his own main board. So he created this thing called the STM Octopus, which is basically a Cerberus clone, but it's in an octagon shape. And he designed it so that it's stackable, and he's working on building a quadcopter around that platform, which is really kind of cool. Yeah, I mean, he's just got a lot of really cool stuff out there. And there's another one called Thread Needle by another one of the NetMF community guys. He touts as the first wearable NetMF board. So that's kind of cool as well.
That is cool. Yeah, I'm looking at, if you just go look at the catalog, and you can find all these modules. Let's just I'm going to just walk through these modules so you get an idea, okay? So you've got an amp module that amplifies a signal from a headphone for headphones or powered speakers. A music module, this is all in the audio thing, that adds MP3, WMA, OGG, MIDI wave playback capability with OGG recording, OGG Vorbis. The radio module, the FM receiver, that's $20, by the way. The tunes module, which is for tones and little melodies, electronic tones.
Yeah, chip tunes.
Yeah. So then you've got cameras. There's a $35 camera, color camera, that's 320 by 240. A serial camera L1 module, it's also $35, and an L2 module that's $45, which is a high resolution color camera. I believe it's 640 by 480. So then you've got some extenders, which aren't all that exciting to talk about, but you have relays, you have motor drivers, parallel port for CNC controllers, a pulse in-out module. So how does the pulse in-out module, which says Daisy Link on it, which is used to read and send remote control signals, how is that different from what your IR emitter is?
Well, so the pulse in-out module doesn't actually have any LEDs on it. It's just basically, it allows you, it has its own kind of daughter processor or its own microcontroller on board.
Okay.
And what it does is it allows you to extend the capability of a main board to send PWM signals, which are pulse width modulation. So PWM can be used to control servos for robotics. It can be used for a variety of things. So PWM signals aren't quite the same as what you do for IR. In my case, I'm actually using a feature of the GHI premium main boards to generate my signal, but you could use PWM for the same kind of thing.
Okay.
PWM, hardware PWM, you could actually generate what we would call the carrier frequency for IR, and then simply use a digital IO to turn that carrier signal on and off in the desired pattern for the given signal.
So moving on, we have two Ethernet modules. One's J11D and the other is ENC28. Don't really know the difference there, but I'm sure somebody does. Richard
They're for
does.
different main boards.
Different main boards, okay.
Yeah.
USB host, which allows you to host a USB, be a USB host device, and then you have also the USB client. A serial USB module that converts any serial socket, UART, into a USB virtual COM port. There's a dual wire CAN transceiver and an OBD2 module for vehicle interface. That's interesting. That one's $60. RS-232, of course. Then you have power modules that use USB and one that uses batteries. So there's one that takes 4 AA batteries, and that can charge your device for ultimate portability. And I imagine that's what you're using on your copter, isn't it?
Well, actually, I have that module. I haven't tried it on the copter project. I actually use the USB client DP module or Well, actually, I think I use the client DP module because it allows both barrel jack. So if I want to use a wall wart to plug it in, but it's also got the mini USB.
Yeah.
So I just actually use an external battery pack because I need a fair amount of juice for my module. It's fairly power hungry.
So using like a lithium ion battery with a power pack with a charger.
Actually, I'm actually just using. There's a rechargeable battery pack that they gave away at one of the MVP summits. I think 2 years ago, and so I just charge that up and carry it with me, and it does a great job of powering it up.
Okay, moving on. Button module. Press the button, get a signal. $5. Joystick, $7. Potentiometer, which if you don't know what that is, that's just like a knob that you turn, like your treble and bass on your old stereo. Or the volume knob on your car's potentiometer. Accelerometer, $14. No, that's an acceleration measurement, which is different from an accelerometer, I think. Then there's an accelerometer for $13, a barometer, a color sense module, which senses colors. That's really cool. So it can tell you whether, it's gray skies or blue skies. Again, the alarm clock thing is astounding. The potential for alarm clocks here. They have a compass module, a current module used to measure higher voltage current, a distance module, which measures distance 2 centimeters to 400 centimeters. So that's sort of like proximity, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's just sending a sound signal, and then it has an ultrasonic sensor. So it uses the ping time essentially from when the signal is sent to when it's received to judge the distance.
Here's an interesting one: a gas sense module for $15. This detects gases, and it will detect methane, butane, liquid propane, gas, smoke, alcohol, ethanol, natural gas, air quality like benzene, hydrogen sulfide gas, ammonia, toluene. You know what that is, Richard?
Bad stuff.
Acetone, formaldehyde, hydrogen. So that's pretty cool. Gas sense. And that's $15. There's a gyro module, so they can tell whether you're upside down or whatever. A light sense module, that's a light sensor. Tell if it's dark out. A moisture module, as we were talking about before. PIR motion detection. Now, that is your typical, tells you if something's moving around, right?
Yeah, it's a passive infrared sensor.
All right. Yep. Motion detector, $15. Pulse oximeter module. And this is an interesting one. It's $139. And it comes with a big disclaimer. It's particularly convenient, non-invasive measurement instrument. It indirectly monitors the oxygen saturation in humans' blood and changes in blood volume in the skin. It also provides the heat rate and monitors the state of heat working. But it says, note, this module is not intended to be used as a medical instrument. Do not use this product as safety or emergency device. Do not use this product in any application where failure of this product could lead to loss or personal injury. Big disclaimer there, but it is interesting, huh?
Yeah, well, it's one of those finger clips for measuring oxygen levels in your blood.
Temperature and humidity module, thermocouple used to measure extreme temperatures through, K-type thermocouple. So really hot things. And then we have a GPS module, power extender, and RFID reader module, $30. That's fun. Have you done anything with RFID?
I haven't done anything with that module, but the idea that comes to mind right away, of course, is turn things on or off when you come into a room, or basically anything that just requires proximity, but you don't want anybody and anything to trigger it. Yeah. Having an RFID card where you can just say, okay, this is my, I can open my garage door with my RFID card, and I built it all myself, right?
Yep. Sure.
Not that those solutions don't exist, as Richard pointed out, but it's sort of fun when you build those solutions yourself.
So now you have storage. There's an SD card module for $7, a 4 megabyte flash module for $15, and a micro SD card module for $7. And then we come to the displays. Display T35 is out of stock. That's 320 by 240 color. This display TE35 is 320 by 240, 3.5 inch, $80. Multicolor LED. It's just a very small LED, and then that's $16. A character display module for 16 by 2 for $15. And then we come to the 7-inch 800 by 40 480 TFT display with capacitive multi-touch.
Yeah,
$200.
But that's a nice screen.
Yeah,
big time.
Nice. Then there's a color display module, 128 by 160 for $30. And 480 by 272 4.3 inch color display module with a touchscreen for $100. And then you've got the 5 meter long 160 individually programmable LED tape. Yeah,
so I got to geek out on this for a minute.
All right.
If you head over to vimeo.com/devhammer, I actually have a video of me running some of these multicolor LEDs. So these are actually digitally addressable RGB LEDs, which means you can essentially treat them like pixels.
Wow.
And so you can set any individual LED in the string to any color you want. Because they've got each one of the LEDs has a red element, a green one, and a blue one. And so you can set the intensity of each of those three separately. You can do some amazingly cool things with digitally addressable LEDs. So the festive module just makes it a whole lot easier to attach several of these in sort of a format where you could use it as a very large character display or whatever you want to do. If you want to have an amazing Christmas show, get a bunch of multicolor LEDs and go to town.
Now, are the LEDs bright, or are they just?
Oh, yeah,
really?
They're very bright. Yes. Yeah, you
Like
put them
the
on
whole-
full intensity.
Full intensity, you could light up a room.
Oh yeah,
Wow.
most definitely. I mean, it depends on how many of them you've got, but if you have 5 meters, that's a lot of LEDs.
And just to let you know, currently out of stock because they're apparently very popular. All right, so then there's the festive module, which is used to connect LED strips to Gadgeteer main boards. You need one of those. Then we've got, what else do we have? An LED matrix module. That's not sure what that is.
That one's actually kind of cool. It's an 8x8 red LED. It's basically a square module with an 8x8 LED matrix.
Okay.
And so you can light up any of them in any patterns you want. I actually wrote some code that I shared up on the GHI community that does a simple alphabet. It's just a simple font character set for that display. So instead of having to individually address kind of the hex addresses, you could simply say, class name dot A, right? And it would display an A. So I think I've actually got a video of that up on my Vimeo site as well, just a demo of that.
Cool. There's also a video out module, which has a VGA and analog video out. No HDMI there. But let's see what else we have. A Wi-Fi module for $80, access point for direct, easy connection to Wi-Fi devices. Then there's another Wi-Fi module with an integrated antenna for $80. A Wi-Fi RS-21 module with an antenna for $100. So a few things there to choose from. A Bluetooth module, in case you haven't got enough Bluetooth in your life. A cellular radio module. Now that is interesting because you can, I guess you can connect that to your cell phone network, can you not?
Yeah.
Just stick a GSM chip in it with data and off you go.
Yep.
So does it take a SIM card?
Yep.
Wow. That's crazy cool.
Yeah. Take your Gadgeteer on the road.
$70.
Just think about how much trouble you get into with that.
Oh, I can imagine. Got to have the battery pack, though.
Yeah, I think you need one of those for the next roadshow, guys.
Oh, please. All right, 2 more.
We already report too much about our RV as it is.
There's 2 more here. There's an IR receiver module with remote. So this is a little remote and a little IR receiver.
Yeah.
And then the XB adapter module, which adds wireless connectivity, including ZigBee and Wi-Fi. What are those?
So those are protocols and hardware specifications that allow you to easily add. They're actually There are ZigBee modules that are available for Wi-Fi, and then there are other ones that use their own proprietary wireless protocol. And basically, so the adapter module is just a socket. You still need to get the connectivity, but once you get that, you can send data via serial or via Wi-Fi. It just kind of simplifies if you have multiple main boards and you wanted to connect a couple of your Gadgeteer projects. It makes it a little easier to do that wirelessly.
All right.
And ZigBee is a household automation protocol.
Oh, do you use that, Richard?
I don't use it myself because I'm a hardcore X10 guy.
Okay.
But ZigBee is well known. It's, you know, if you want to turn outlets off and on, there's appliances that work with it. Like, it's a pretty well known product.
Cool. All right. So let's go to and I know we're running out of time here, but I want to cover these because it's so cool. The community creations. And this is where your IR LED array module is, and it's $10 to $15 depending on how many you buy.
Well, it actually depends on whether you want it assembled or not. So I give people the option if they want to solder it themselves, if they want to, because it's a really simple module. There's not a lot to it.
Save $10, $5. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. So Chucky is a Gadgeteer module connect Wii controllers, $7. There's a DSLR module for $10 to control a digital SLR camera. Interesting. The Octopus, which you talked about, Justin's Octopus there, an RGB Pixel, a chainable RGB Pixel with 24-bit resolution, 1 pixel.
Well, the nice thing with that one is that you can plug multiple of them in a row.
Yeah.
And you could go crazy with it.
Cool. A power Ethernet module. Now, what's the difference between that and an Ethernet module?
So there's actually a standard for providing power over Ethernet. Power Ethernet.
That's what that is.
Right. So if you wanted to have both your networking and your power, and you lose one cable, essentially, you can use that module to do that.
Okay, go ahead.
That module and the Chucky module were created by a guy who goes by the handle of Architect. His name's Valentin, and he is the absolute ruler of the GHI community. This guy is a prolific poster. He helped me a ton in figuring out the design for my module. I would not have gotten off the ground without his help. So I definitely want to give him a shout out. Great guy.
Okay, then there's the stereo UV module. This displays left and right volume levels or any other 2-channel level information. Each side has 4 green, 3 yellow, and 2 red LEDs. That's pretty cool. The RF pipe, so wireless 2.4 gigahertz serial pipe. Any comments on that? What is that all about?
That one I haven't looked into. So
all right.
I think that's, again, another way of connecting 2 different devices.
It says that it allows you to easily and reliably send and receive error-free wireless data between 2 or more RF pipes at a data rate of 9600 baud. So that's interesting. Wireless. Then there's the beam breaker, which has 2 little poles, and if you stick something in between it, it breaks the beam, and you can measure that.
Yep.
That's cool. A G-IMP, Gadgeteer to Electric IMP module. The electric IMP is obviously something else that you can interface to.
Yep.
All right. Thread Needle, world's first wearable .NET MF board. This is what you were talking about.
Yeah.
Before. It's just a very small wearable plate.
Yeah, and what he's done is it's circular, and he's broken the pinouts all the way around the circle so that instead of sockets, you actually would, in this case, you'd solder or use conductive thread to connect different circuits.
And it's only like 50 millimeters wide.
Yeah.
Very small.
Very interesting thinking about weaving this into your clothing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What kind of trouble can we get into with that?
Yeah, there are other platforms, like I think LilyPad is the one that's kind of the original wearable microcontroller, but this is the first one that's .NET Micro Framework based.
All right, I have one last question for you, and that is, you created one of these little things, these little modules. How do you do that?
Well, so you start with software, right? There's actually a free version of a PCB design software called Eagle. But before you even start designing your PCB, really what you do is you use a breadboard, and you kind of conceptually, what am I doing with the circuit? So I started off looking at the remote control for the helicopter and said, well, it has 3 LEDs. Let me try using 3 IR LEDs. So I went to Radio Shack. I got some IR LEDs. I plugged them in my breadboard. I hooked up the appropriate resistors to get the kind of output that I wanted. I plugged in a transistor so that I could, with the signal from a pin, turn those LEDs on or off. And then once I had something that was working on a breadboard, then it came time to jump into this Eagle CAD software, which allows you to set up the size of the board that you want and lay out the circuits. And so you lay out, it's like I know that I'm starting with this Gadgeteer socket. So I know I've got these 10 pins. Then which pin am I going to use for signal? That has to match the specification for Gadgeteer. And so I went through an iterative process where I would do a design, I'd post it to the community, and they would look at it and say, well, this trace is a little too close to this. You want to move this around. Maybe you should try this. And one of the things that I did that I think has worked out really well is I designed it such that the pads for the LEDs, the LEDs can be mounted either on the top, on edge, or on the bottom, so that no matter how you want to mount the module in your project, you can get the LEDs pointing in the direction you need them. But it's really, ultimately, my module is a really super simple module. It has 1 transistor that turns on or off LEDs and 2 resistors. And that's really it.
Well, now, how much electronics knowledge and experience have you had before this?
I had soldered in my life prior to this, but before kind of joining the tiny CLR community, I really wasn't a hardware geek at all. And
really,
and I have to give a lot of credit to guys like Valentin. Pete Brown helped me a lot.
Did you end up taking like remedial electronics classes just to know what, resistors and transistors and capacitors were and stuff?
Well, I did a fair amount of reading on the web as I was working with this and trying to figure out. Some of it was also just guesswork. Trips to Radio Shack, getting the right thing, and finding, for example, an LED calculator that helps you figure out what resistor you need for a given voltage. I think they call it forward current for a given LED, and figure out, okay, what kind of resistor do I need to make sure that I don't burn this LED out. It's when you're working with LEDs, again, it's the bar is fairly low. Right. Some of the community creations are a good bit more complicated, like the RF pipe, for example. There's a lot more involved in designing something like that. So I don't want to, kind of overstate, my mad skills in terms of electronics, but it was enormously satisfying.
But it should be noted, though, that, a guy who done some soldering can design a board that plugs in, just by looking around and asking the right questions. With me, the biggest thing is not knowing what I don't know, Yeah.
And the satisfaction of getting some boards from a PCB manufacturer, and there are a bunch of them out there that are relatively inexpensive, and then soldering this thing up and actually having it work the first time. I tell you, I was tickled pink. It was just, what a great feeling to actually have it work. And by the way, a tip for anybody who needs to figure out if an IR LED is working, use your cell phone camera, because most cameras actually have an IR filter to keep IR radiation out, but a cell phone camera doesn't. So you can actually point your cell phone camera at an IR LED and see it flashing. You can try it with your TV remote sometime.
That's cool.
Yeah, it's kind of fun.
Yeah, old video cameras had that problem too, that they saw IR in as white.
Huh.
And actually, you know what? It turns out there's actually somebody who's designing a pair of glasses that you can wear to try and fool facial recognition. It has 11 high intensity IR LEDs on the frame of the glasses.
Did you hear that, NSA? Are you listening? Did you hear that? Because we'll say it again. It's okay.
So if you don't want to be recognized, or if you want to kind of like blind the Google Glass camera that your buddy's wearing to lunch with you, just put on these IR goggles, and you'll be relatively anonymous.
I got a feeling the Google Glass thing is going to go the way of the Segway. Like the Segway was supposed to be this great thing that changed the culture, and it turned out it was the dorkiest thing ever.
So Carl, are you saying that only mall cops will be wearing Google Glass while they ride their Segways?
Yeah.
You're not wrong there, because it makes a lot of sense for a security person to be wearing Google Glass.
Yeah. But
That's
I mean,
creepy,
just the
though.
weirdness of, it's weird enough when people walk down the street talking to themselves. We used to call that schizophrenia. Now, oh no, he's just talking on his cell phone. It's okay. But I mean, can you imagine how tuned out people are going to be with Google Glass? I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm just projecting.
Just
perhaps.
saying.
Yeah.
So I got one more thing I want to make sure that I don't miss.
Okay.
And it's not Gadgeteer related, but it is awesome.
Okay.
I'm assuming you guys have heard about this by now, but you know that Chris from Secret Labs has a Kickstarter project that just finished and is funded called the Agent Smartwatch. This is a .NET Micro Framework based smartwatch that communicates via Bluetooth, can talk to Android, iOS, Windows Phone, and it's really awesome. I actually just pledged to this the other day. Their goal was $100,000. They got $1 million, $12,742.
Oh my
pledged,
God.
And they're funded. This is awesome. And even better, it actually is rechargeable via Qi wireless charging. So if you've got, like I have, a Lumia 920 with the wireless charging pad, you can just drop your phone on there or your watch on there and charge it up that way.
Wow.
Very, very cool. So I'm excited for that. I definitely, I felt like got to give a shout out to Chris, because that's probably one of the coolest Kickstarters that I've seen. And it actually does relate back to Gadgeteer, because the .NET Micro Framework started its life in a watch. Do you remember Spot? Yeah. So Spot was the origin of Tiny CLR that eventually became the .NET Micro Framework. And I remember, I actually still own some of my Spot watches, by the way. But I remember having a Spot watch and looking in the menu and seeing Tiny CLR and being so mad that I couldn't program it.
Yeah.
But now there's a smartwatch that I can program. So
That's
I'm
pretty
very
cool.
excited.
That's
Good
awesome.
stuff.
I love it. Andrew, we ran a little bit over, but it was worth it. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
This is so cool. Hey, we'll see you next time on .NET Rocks. Thanks for listening. And remember, Pluralsight.com is where you can get 200 free minutes of developer training online. Pluralsight.com. .NET Rocks is recorded and produced by PWOP Productions, providing professional audio, audio mastering, video, post-production, and podcasting services. Online at www.pwop.com. .NET Rocks is a production of Franklin's Net, training developers to work smarter and offering custom on-site classes in Microsoft development technology with expert developers. Online at www.franklins.net. For more .NET Rocks episodes and to subscribe to the podcast feeds, go to our website at www.dotnetrocks.com.
Got transmitter banned by the FCC. Yes, I'm a